people who are outside the door to come on in? Step on through the door, or hey, Alex, can you close the door in the back just so we don't have people? Okay. So first off, welcome to San Mateo City Hall. This is not a City of San Mateo City Council meeting. I say that because I'm going to be introducing the great people from Caltrain who come out to speak tonight, and then be excusing myself and joining you in the gallery. We do have a few other council members here. Deputy Mayor Lorraine is somewhere. There he is in the back corner. And Council Member Lisa Diaz-Nash is here as well. One thing about this, because we have more than 2 council members in attendance, we as council members can't ask questions. So nice little Brown Act thing. But okay, so we're here to participate just like you. We appreciate you having us. Also want to make sure I thank city staff, particularly the clerk, the city manager, our director of public works, and our deputy city manager back there for hosting and allowing this to happen here tonight. And with that, I'd like to introduce the Caltrain's team. So starting off, we have Brent Tejan, who's the external communications manager. Brent, you want to give us a little wave? All right. We've got John Hogan somewhere, the chief operations manager. Where are you, John? There's John. We've got Casey Fromson, who's the chief of staff. Welcome. We have Navi Dhaliwal. Did I get that right? Government De La Cruz, the safety officer, all here. So I'm going to turn this over to them. Caltrain, thank you so much for coming out and meeting with our team, our city today. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. And thank you to our partners at the city for providing a venue and helping with all of the audio here. I am going to go over a couple slides and will be your facilitator today. And we hope that the information that we will provide will be useful, maybe something you didn't know today. We also have these cards, and I'll repeat this again in the back. And so as you see something you want to ask a question about, feel free to jot it down and we'll get to that at the end. So let's go ahead and get started. I think we have about a 20-minute presentation, and then we'll save the rest of the time for Q&A. Okay, great. So the agenda for this evening, thank you, is introductions, which we've covered. We're going to have a few slides on the parking track and wall update. Then we'll talk about horn noise and updated information. And then the City of San Mateo will be presenting some information about the Quiet Zone project that they are leading. We'll have a Q&A, as I said, and then you can feel free to pass out one of your answers to one of the staff members that we've identified here. We color-coded them just to make it easier and trying to group some of the colors. Blue ones are for the horn noise and quiet zones, and yellows for the parking track. All right, next slide. Some general group agreements. Please use civil and respectful language. We want to stay on topic. Submit questions and comments on the card. We don't want to have disruptions. It'd be nice to make sure everyone kind of can hear what they're saying and it's a respectful environment. And then, as I said, I will be the facilitator to make sure all voices are heard. And we certainly want to stay until as many questions that we need to come forward are answered. All right, with that, I'm going to turn it over to our safety officer.
Good evening. Name is Leo De La Cruz, and I'm the rail safety officer for Caltrain. Brief safety moment here. In a case of an evacuation, we'll be going down this door. These are the main doors. We do have a couple more doors down over here leading up to the rear of the building, but the main one, we're going to exit out here. Down the street to 20th Avenue, a couple of blocks down to Elkhorn to go into the parking lot behind the Shriners is the designated rally point. 330 20th Street is the address of this place. If we ever need to call 911, let them know that come here to the City Hall Council Chambers. We have a few fire extinguishers on this location. Down that corridor, there's one on that other corridor. To the hallway, and an AED towards the door, towards the parking lot. Anybody else here that is CPR qualified that can help just in case? All right, perfect. Okay, quick safety moment. Next few days we'll be encountering rain, right? We haven't had rain in a while, so please check your vehicle, your bicycle, or any mode of transportation that it is properly ready to take on the rain. You know, tires, your wipers, making sure you have you're ready with your proper clothing. Take care of where you're walking. The your footwear and that sort of thing. So let's have a safe evening. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Leo. Thank you, Casey. Thank you, Mayor Newsom, and all the council members here in the city for hosting us for this evening. So just to provide some quick context on Caltrain, we run 77 miles of track between San Francisco all the way down to Gilroy. We have 31 stations, including 3 in San Mateo. We run 104 trains between San Francisco and San Jose daily. We've been running 104 trains since the increase we made in August of 2022. We have 41 at-grade vehicular crossings, 9 of which are in San Mateo, and 11 pedestrian crossings, 2 of which are at the the Hayward Park station in San Mateo. Caltrain service hours are from 4:30 in the morning to 1:30 in the morning as well. This is just a reminder of all the crossings in San Mateo, and we'll go into more detail in this in a moment, but from Peninsula Avenue to 5th Avenue, there are a number of crossings down to 5th, and then obviously 9th and Hayward Park has crossings as well. And then the 2 at Hayward Park are pedestrian-only crossings, so there's no vehicular crossings at Hayward Park Station, but there is pedestrian crossings and gates there. Caltrain is at a transformational moment. I'm sure you've seen the transformation from us since 1864. We've had diesels on the corridor, steam actually on the corridor then, diesels on the corridor in 1950. And then just last year in August and September, we launched our new electric service with these new electric trains. This was a quick overview of all the construction that took place. I'm sure you've seen some of it, the poles and wires out there from 2017 to 2024. Installed over 3,000 foundations, concrete foundations in the ground, 2,500 poles between San Francisco and San Jose, 10 traction power facilities, one of which is in San Mateo, and then 2.5 million feet of overhead wire. We've also installed a new signal system that has upgraded the crossings at all the crossings along the corridor. And then obviously having procured the new electric trains, 16 of which are currently on site. We had some great events celebrating the start of the electrification service. We had one great event on September 22nd in San Mateo, had thousands of people come through. We also had one on September 21st in Palo Alto, and a lot of celebration for the new trains, and they've been in service since then. For the overall electrified service plans, if you're riding Caltrain, you can get there faster from San Francisco to San Jose in an hour. Quicker local service, 78 minutes instead of 100, which was on the diesels, and saving 20 minutes on that trip down to Gilroy from San Francisco. 20% more service overall, even though we're running the same amount of trains. These electric trains are able to start and stop more quickly, providing more station stops along the way. 26% more service at our equity priority stations, and then half-hourly service at any time throughout the day and on weekends. So doubling that service on weekends from hourly to half-hourly. These trains are very modern, safe, clean, electric, free Wi-Fi on board, smoother and quieter experience, outlets at every seat, and digital trip information on board, not to mention all the sustainability and clean green benefits of this project. I did want to highlight that this might be a little small, but I'll go through it, that San Mateo station used to have 78 trains stopping at that station. Now it has all of the trains, 104, that stop at San Mateo, so providing more connections. Hayward Park has about 29 more trains. It used to have 46, and this is weekday service. Used to have 46, and now has 75 trains stopping at Hayward Park. Again, still 104 trains that are going through all the stations, which has been since August of 2022. And then Hillsdale, key station, is 89, used to have 89 trains, and now again is getting every train that stops, 104. So again, just making more connections along the corridor. I'll hand it over to Navi Dhaliwal to talk about the parking track update.
Okay, good evening, folks. My name is Navi Dhaliwal, Acting Government Community Affairs Manager at Caltrain. As Brett mentioned, I'll be talking a little bit more and delving into the San Mateo replacement parking track overview. So As many of you may or may not know, we installed the San Mateo parking track as a part of the 25th Avenue grade separation project, and it's intended for infrequent use. As a reminder, this is not an active maintenance or construction site. This is just an opportunity for our team to do any sort of operations, light operations that are necessary for the trains to just get them back in operation and service. In 2024, Caltrain built the track necessary for future electrification, ensuring alignment with long-term rail improvements, and additional work, including installation of poles and overhead catenary system, OCS wires, is pending scheduling and funding. In response to community feedback, the city of San Mateo, in coordination with Caltrain, added an enhancement wall and vegetation along Railroad Avenue. This 12-foot enhancement wall will is improving aesthetics and providing a visual barrier for the neighborhood. Creeping fig vines will be planted, and I believe they already are planted, to grow along the wall over time. And then, as promised and committed during the beginning of the project, any removed trees are going to be replaced 1-to-1 with efforts to replant on site wherever feasible. Work began in spring of 2024 and has been completed in December of 2024. The only thing that we have remaining out there is just some closeout items, including restoration and fencing. And so those were mostly completed the week of January 2025. And then we have environmental monitoring that's actually taking place currently, started on January 28th, 2025, and should be concluded on January 30th, tomorrow, as long as we don't have any sort of inclemental weather impacting that. As with any project, as I mentioned, if there are any unforeseen conditions, we're going to make sure that we're communicating that through not only our next door, but also our Caltrain construction email, which I'll flash on the screen in just a moment. So just to provide a little bit of an update on the wall itself, as discussed, we did have that 12-foot enhancement wall that was included. Just as a reminder for folks and to prime just the conversation, the most northern spot at 10th Avenue had, due to environmentally sensitive areas, the wall was set back just roughly 90 feet, but is still at 10th Avenue. And then at 12th Avenue, an interim slated fence was installed as a temporary solution. I want to just go ahead and say this. Caltrain acknowledges that we should have communicated these plans to the community sooner, especially when we had such active community meetings and engagements with the community during the duration of the project's implementation and discussion. But, we're here today to make sure that everyone is clear in understanding that there is a next phase of work that will be included. And once that installation of the OCS poles and wires is complete, we have full intention to put that wall extend the wall back, so you will no longer see the slated fence. We remain committed to improving these communications and ensuring the community is informed about next steps. And then finally, a quick update I'm going to probably say this wrong, but the Hanrahan Court and 12th Avenue pedestrian access door is there, and that's for railroad emergencies not expected to be used. So if you see in that middle photo, that's illustrating where the emergency door is. And as mentioned, we're only going to use this for emergency purposes. Finally, just to talk a little bit more about the south end, we've got the wall that currently extends up to an existing tree at the site. We know that residents have been curious about why this doesn't go out all the way in totality. And so to preserve the tree, Caltrain, in conjunction with the city of San Mateo, installed a slated fence in place of a solid wall. And that's just so that we can make sure that we can still have that tree present, and then also give access to, continue to maintain access to Wilkinson construction that's just at the edge of the 14th Avenue. As I mentioned, there's still an additional phase of work to be done for the parking track, but Caltrain remains committed to ensuring that you, our community members, the council, is apprised of the next update once we have a significant one to share. And so my best advice for everyone would be to make sure that you're checking in on, if you have any questions, you can reach us at the webpage. That information is available right here on the screen, or you're welcome to give us a call or even sign up for weekly construction notices or reach us via email. The biggest thing to also do is, we're constantly reflecting any of our updates on Nextdoor. And so that will be a really great spot as well to make sure you can stay updated on where the parking track effort is going. And I'll go ahead and hand it over to Brent.
Great. Thanks, Navi. I'll talk about horns and then hand it over to the city for a quick update on the quiet zone process as well. And then we'll answer all the questions. So just talking about the horn decibel, the actual decibel level of the horns, that is mandated by the federal government, by the FRA, the Federal Railroad Administration. There's the actual site here of the coding, but it requires decibels to be between 96 and 110 decibels. Our old diesels, in addition to the horn, used to have loud idling. The new electric trains obviously do not have that. Those diesels were routinely tested at the 97 to 98 decibel level. The new electric trains do have quieter ambient levels than the idling diesel trains. When the new electric trains came here in August, we do acknowledge and apologize that they were being tested at around 106 decibels. And so as soon as we learned that, we started to work on a process to reduce that down to the 96, 97 decibel level, which happened in early December. You would think with these new electric trains, it would just be a dial, but it's actually a physical choke that you have to put on the horn and test to make sure it's reaching that decibel level. And I will also mention that the decibel level is a logarithmic scale, so the difference between 106 and 96 is exponential. This is where the actual physical location of the horn is. You can see the yellow pointing down there, just below the cab, or pretty far down below the cab. You can see on the right-hand side of the screen where the actual horn is. Again, underneath the cab, probably as low as it could be. And this is a little bit lower than where the diesels were. For the horn audits, so Caltrain heard the community and did some horn audits from our operations team. They audited the sounding of the correct pattern and location of the trains. There were 55 trains that were audited over 4 days at these 4 locations: San Mateo, 10th Avenue, Hayward Park Station, and Hillsdale Station. All trains were within compliance, and we'll talk about what that means in a moment. I will note and talk about Hillsdale Station. A train horn is not required there because it is grade separated, but it is allowed there if there are emergency circumstances, say somebody on the track or somebody behind the yellow line on the platform. So this is a summary of the laws that regulate the sounding of the horns and where they have to be sounded. I mentioned the decibel level earlier, but this is the physical location. For the FRA, again, the Federal Railroad Administration requires the sounding of horns at all public highway grade crossings, including adjacent or contiguous pedestrian crossings. It requires a horn use policy when approaching railroad workers, folks on the track that are working. Again, that could have been a lot of the reason that there were additional horns in the parking track area when that work was happening from spring to December of 2024. For California law, that doesn't require the sounding of horns when approaching a pedestrian-only crossing. Again, the site and the code is here. We also follow something called the G-Core, which is the general code of operating rules for railroads. Over 500 railroads have adopted this across the country, and that does require sounding of same thing, horns at vehicular crossings, pedestrian crossings, and when approaching a construction site or an emergencies, as I mentioned. And so the Federal Railroad Administration has all these laws at the top here, but they do also establish and outline how to establish a quiet zone, which the city will talk about in a moment. And that's actually who I'm going to hand it over to, Jimmy Vo, right? No, great. Thanks, Jimmy. You want me to progress?
Yeah, that'd be great. So my name is Jimmy. I work for Public Works. I'm also leading the effort for the train quiet zone in the city of San Mateo. This is our rail corridor. We have a lot of crossings. A lot are grade separated, but a lot are at grade. The ones that are at grade are notified or denoted in yellow. So my job right now for the last couple of years working with my team is to implement a train quiet zone for San Mateo. And what's a train quiet zone? It's an area along this corridor that once we make certain safety improvements, then the train noise sound becomes optional. Meaning once they pass pedestrian at-grade crossings, if the zones have certain safety improvements, the horns theoretically should not sound. I do want to make a very clear distinction between a train quiet zone is not a silent zone. You will hear noise on trains, most notably at stations if there's an occupied platform, if there's a safety issue, and what Brett mentioned earlier, if there's construction happening in the general area. So I want to make that very clear that it is always a safety issue if the horns are sounding, even when we're in a train quiet zone. So where are we at right now? Thank you. We are currently working on 2 sites at Villa Terrace and at Bellevue. We originally went to council late last year to provide a recommendation on what we think would be a great approach for the area. That was a closure at Villa Terrace and a median improvement at Bellevue. And those are the pictures on the left and the right on the bottom. So closure is exactly what it sounds like. It's going to be a closure of the street, like a little turn to a cul-de-sac, or there could be barriers that would limit vehicular traffic, bike traffic, pedestrian traffic. And then the median on that lower right area is a physical barrier, and that's to reduce conflicts from vehicles potentially overcrossing and driving into the railroad safety area. So those items were presented to council, and during that council meeting, we had some concerns, residents pointing out there could be major impacts to these streets, which we agree. And then there were issues that could relate to traffic circulation through the area. So council's direction at that time was to send staff back out to evaluate different alternatives and also to look into potential closures at East Bellevue, but also to look at a traffic analysis study to look at how many vehicles are moving through and out the area, what would the impacts be for residents and community members. And that's where we're at right now. So our schedule is looking, and I'll start from the bottom up. So we're at 4th and 5th. Those construction improvements are going to be completed this summer. So we're aiming for May to June completion in that area. And then I mentioned earlier, we're on a brief pause for the East Bellevue and the Villa Terrace locations until we do a traffic analysis. At that time, we will go back out to the public, provide the information that we learned, and also reach out to council to seek further direction. And we're anticipating to start construction after we get direction from council sometime in early 2026. Once that initiates and that starts, we're anticipating about 6 months of construction, and we'll start a notice of intent and then eventually a notice of quiet zone establishment for the area. We're aiming for the end of 2026. It could be marginally sooner or a little bit later than that, but that's the goal for Public Works at this point. And with that, I will pass it back to Caltrain.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to recap a little bit and then everyone can soak in the information. And if you have additional questions or comments, feel free to write them down and our team will pick them up, or hold up your hand if you need a card. But on the parking track, I actually saw a woman here today that I've worked at Caltrain for 10 years. And I know that this is an issue that the community cares about. And I know we can do better on communicating. So you're hearing directly from someone that has talked to the community in the past, and that we want to be good partners and continue to work together to make sure that that we are sharing information at the right time. And then on the horn noise, hopefully that was helpful for a lot of people. I know we've heard questions about, what's a regulation versus what's a need to have. Safety is an absolute top priority at Caltrain. You can see that we start all of our meetings with a safety moment. But quiet zones are absolutely a process that happens on the corridor today. There is one other quiet zone. It's in Atherton, and there was a process that went through and that was established. And so certainly if there is a quiet zone that is established in San Mateo, we will abide by that, with the exception that was mentioned. If there is a safety issue, if we saw someone on the corridor or work was happening, we would need to sound the horn. But certainly if you go to Atherton today, you can get a sense of what it's like of not hearing the horns through that area. So I just want to do kind of a global recap on the presentations you saw today. And that was the first section of the whole presentation. So we had it on. Okay, well, if you would like to put in a question, we're happy to go over it. So I'm going to start with questions right now for everyone. I've grouped them mostly for the ones I've seen in the beginning, and a lot of them are focusing around the quiet zone and horn noise. So I'm going to start with this one. I went from hearing Caltrain horns from 2000 to July 2024 to hearing 700 plus Caltrain horns per day in August 2024. I've made numerous complaints to Caltrain and the city of San Mateo since August 2024. Until January 20th, 2025, there was zero reduction in horns. Only starting January 20th, 2025 has there been a reduction in horn during the day, and only when will Caltrain reduce the horns to zero like it was from 2000 to July 2024? I live on South Delaware Street. I think for this one, we answered this one in the presentation of what our service patterns are and what we're doing today, but I think this points to a path that will have zero potential horn noise in the future would be the quiet zone. The second question we have on here is, I think trains should lower their whistle volume. I don't want the tracks to close. It's much safer to cross them and cross at Peninsula. That will definitely get worse if the tracks are closed. I live in that neighborhood for almost 50 years, and I appreciate those train crossings. Please don't shut them down. There are more problems that a closure would create. All right, the next one. Why are horn noise louder on electric trains? And I think you heard some of the answers for that they certainly were louder, and we acknowledge that. We went through a process that they are now lower. It seems like it's higher pitched than the old diesel trains. It's louder than our TV. Heard Atherton is looking into a very different gate that covers the entire intersection and would negate the need to blow the horn noise. And so that's referring to the quiet zone process that has been established in Atherton and that the city of San Mateo is undertaking. Have you planned for the increase in horn noise exposure as the train speeds increase? So that, I don't think it was covered by Brent in this, but the train speeds for our electrified trains has not increased. So our diesel trains could go up to 79 miles per hour, and our current electric ones, also the high end is up to 79 miles per hour. They have the capability to go higher, but we're not running it at that, and that would only be at a future date. And so the actual speed of the train has not changed. This one is a little longer. San Mateo is leaning towards closing Villa Terrace and is deciding whether to close East Bellevue or potentially converting it to one-way street. The one-way conversion idea was floated by the previous mayor. My question is about the cost of either option. How much will each option cost, and how much of the cost Caltrain will need to pass to the city? The second is a technical question about the gates. According to the Railroad Highway Grade Crossing Handbook by the Department of Transportation and the Federal Railroad Administration, one street with gates across the railroad or quad gates can automatically qualify for a quiet zone if employed at every crossing. Have you considered using the hinge gate? I've heard old quotes in past by the city that each quad gate costs $3 million. The third is the sound of the warning bell. I understand that the train horn must be 96 decibels, but I don't find the warning bell has such regulation. As a resident who lives very close to the crossing and past the crossing multiple times per day on bicycle or foot, the warning bell levels way exceeds what's necessary. I feel my temporary hearing loss every time I encounter that. Can you consider lowering the sound noise of the warning bell? So I think the first two questions are for the city about the quiet zone, if you'd like to answer those.
So we have a few initial estimates with Caltrain, depending on what option we choose between a median improvements, closure, and or someone will mention the quad gates in there, and they range. We're still working out the details and how much of their staff costs would be, but it's anywhere from 800,000 to the larger end of that, which is quad gates, would be 3 to 4 million or more, depending on what we do over there. So at the very minimum, I think it's close to 800,000. That's just Caltrain's cost. There's still city costs that needs to be employed there. And that is a improvement that would be a closure at Villa Terrace and a median at Bellevue. And prices would go up towards to 3 to 4 million if you're looking at quad gates for any of those intersections.
Thank you. The third question was about the sound of the bell. And this one, we will have to double check. We don't think there is a regulation on the level of it, but again, this would also fall under a quiet zone. So if there was a quiet zone established, we also would not be doing the bell in those areas. The next one is a positive note. So thank you. From our home, we can hear the trains at about the same volume as ever. Up close, the trains pass. They're quieter than the diesel trains were. Despite some inconvenience at crossings, I'd want the trains to continue at their new schedule. It makes Caltrain to San Francisco more practical and better for everyone. There are a series of questions now related to the pattern of the horn noise. And so I'll go through these. But again, I think all of these questions about the pattern would fall under the same world of if a quiet zone is established, we would not be blowing the horn at all through the area. So the solution to excessive noise is very simple. Caltrain operators need to signal exactly like the Union Pacific operator signal. Their horns are very brief. By contrast, Caltrain signals are often sustained across the whole city. Caltrain monthly pass holders, frequent rider, working downtown San Mateo. Horns can be automated at the crossings along with the gates and flashing lights. I would like to know if train horns can be controlled by individual engineers, but instead programmed by computer. For some of these, I actually talked to our chief operating officer, and the automated system is not something that we have on the trains, and that we do not know of railroads that have that, but we will look into it to double check. So we appreciate the comments on that, and we'll look into it. Again, I think the overarching concern about horn noise would be covered by a quiet zone. This one is a general comment, which is not related to the topics today. So I'm going to hold this one to the end to cover topics that weren't covered. All right. Do you want to say these are grouping of horn noise ones? Yeah. Okay. So why do the new electric trains blow horns more than the old trains? Why do the electric trains run past Hillsdale Station on some weekends early, sometimes 4 to 4:30 a.m., blowing horns through the corridor the entire way? Brent, you might want to reiterate kind of the new schedule that we have and how that changes our horn patterns for a lot of people.
Yeah, as I mentioned, and I'll see if I can find the clicker here to go back to our service pattern. So we still run 104 trains today, like we have been since August of 2022. There are more stops of the train at these stations in San Mateo, Hillsdale, and Hayward Park. So San Mateo, it gets 104 trains versus a previous 78. Hayward Park gets 46 gets 75 versus a previous 46. And Hillsdale gets 104 now versus 89. So there was always 104 trains running through those stations since August of 2022, but the trains are stopping at the station and then they restart, obviously. So if a train was passing through the station, the horn would pass through your area quicker. But with the train stopping and restarting, the horn does stick around for a little bit longer. So you might be hearing those. That might be a reason why there's additional horns actually being sounded at those stations.
Okay, why do the new electric trains blow horns more than the old trains? Second part, why do the electric trains run past Hillsdale Station on some weekends? Sorry, everyone. Moving on, why are we honking at Hayward Park Station when there's no federal regulation? I think Brent just talked about that. If there's anything else you want to add to that, but I think the second part, you're coming forward to it.
Yeah, just to reiterate, there is no federal regulation, but there is state regulation and law that dictates the sounding of horns at pedestrian crossings.
Okay, we have one for the city again. Why do quiet gates take years to install? How can we expedite the time to help expedite quiet zone?
I'll answer it this way. I don't think it's a matter of taking too long to build. It's a matter of getting enough funding to build it, right? So quad gates are expensive. So $3 to $4 million at an intersection, and it's a bit of coordination with Caltrain to kind of implement them. You're looking $8-9 million to put both of these at Villa Terrace and Bellevue. So it's not really a matter of construction. The construction component, it's fairly quick. It's a matter of pulling enough funding together to build it. And I think that is the difficult part. So medians and barriers, same thing. It's not really hard or difficult or long to build. It's a matter of money, right? Those are a different aspect there are than the quad gates, which would be a little bit more expensive.
Okay, we have another one for you. Don't go far. Yeah. Quad gates seem like the least invasive change, but are there potential safety concerns? For example, if a vehicle is crossing or stuck as the gates go down?
Oh man, that's a tough one. I can answer the first part of that relating to the approach. Yeah, they're very safe. They're most commonly used a lot through the downtown areas. You'll see quad gates come down. In terms of vehicles being stuck in those areas, it'd be difficult for me to speak on a Caltrain related type item. I'm not sure you guys would have a response to that. Oh, breakaway gates.
They have full quadrant gates in Denver, so you never get trapped. Just so there you go. The gates, you would never get trapped. They're plastic. You can just push them out of the way. So if you ever run a crossing and you hear a train coming, just smash the gate and we'll just put a new gate in the next day, that night.
Thank you.
Oh, yeah, that's right. Those gates we have shear pins on those, so if necessary, they can be broken relatively easily. They're not there as a barrier. It's more like a visual kind of barrier type of thing, and hopefully just going to stop somebody from just wantonly walking in there. But if it needs to be, your car can easily drive through that. Now, as far as a car getting stuck inside a quad gate, for one thing, it's usually that you get the entrance gates and the exit gates. The ones that we're normally used to are the entrance gates. You're entering the crossing in the normal direction. The ones for the quad gates on the other side of that is the exit gates, and they usually go down a few seconds after the entrance gates come down. So entrance gates go down first. So if anybody's already in the crossing, they have some time to get out before the exit gates come down. And usually there will be sensors along the tracks, or some places would use cameras to detect if there's anything inside that crossing, which would then prevent the exit gates from going down. So we're still protected on the normal direction of traffic, and anything that's still inside that crossing has an opportunity to escape out of it, because exit gates would either have been delayed going down or will stay up to allow that person to escape, and then it'll go down once it happens.
Thank you there.
Okay, we have a comment to please share these slides. We will put them on our website, and we will also share them with the city, and they may be able to direct it on a location on their website as well. We have some more quiet zone questions, and I think that, just to reiterate, there's going to be a whole process through the city to go through as well, but I think we'll try and answer as many of these today as we can. What do you plan to do about the Hayward Park area? Why is that not part of your quiet zone plan? Maybe you should talk about the location again.
The answer, it is part of the quiet zone plan. So it is in there, it's included. So the whole corridor, if I'm just talking about Villa Terrace, Bellevue, 4th and 5th, those are where the improvements are happening. The quiet zone is for the entire city, right? So it's going to be from Villa Terrace all the way down to 42nd. That's where the quiet zone. So that will include Hayward Park.
This is another question that's kind of in a similar vein. Explain how the quiet zone gates will affect the horn. You're deferring the quiet zone does not help residents in other areas. And so I think you clarified that it does. It would be the entire city of San Mateo would be part of the quiet zone. I think this is a specific comment on the quiet zone. Closing Terra Villa and East Bellevue will close off access to neighborhood schools and create a hazard to traffic traveling west and northwest. Residents want traffic flow and freedom over a quiet zone. This is a comment. Will horns be reduced when construction is complete? When will construction be complete? I think let's talk about that in relation to the parking track.
Yeah, so as Brent had mentioned, whenever there's work that's happening on the railroad, we're going to sound the horn. It's for safety reasons, and we are doing that, all along our corridor. The major construction effort has been completed, so you should not be hearing horn noise unless there is someone out there in terms of their like minor closeout near the tracks. And so for the most part, we should not be hearing anything because construction is complete. And then for the future efforts, we'll make sure that we're notifying the community, and we'll make sure we're building in that language about whether or not folks are going to be hearing the train horn, because they likely will with folks on track. Yeah, correct. But the environmental monitoring that is happening out right now is all of the work that was meant to be touching or would be touching in any close proximity to the track is completed. So for the most part, we should not have any folks near the track, and there should not be any horns being blown at that time.
All right, here's kind of a group of comments that are about the loudness, which again, you'll hear this a lot, but the quiet zone would remove all this, but I want to be mindful and read the comments. You say loudness is the same as the old trains, but then there's much more than the horn loudness. Perhaps it's the production angle of the horn or the pitch. 98 decibel saxophone is much more pleasant than a 98 police siren. Why did I not hear horns for 24 years? And since August 2024, I now hear 700 plus per day. I live on South Delaware by Pacific Avenue. The length or duration of the horns. Why you did not hear horn noise and now you do hear horn noise. We can, as we said in the presentation, we blow our horns at a certain decibel at a pattern that we're required to, and that is a safety regulation. Things have changed with our new electric trains, which we described on that. And then there will be a process that the city is going through to potentially have a quiet zone in the city where you would hear no trains after that. The length and duration of the horns is also important. Sometimes a train uses horns 10 seconds, 15 seconds. In my experience, the duration changes a lot. Why? John, do you want to just take this to describe what an engineer does for this in the general pattern?
The engineers, when they come up to the crossing, they do two shots along and a short on the horn. That's standard. That's what we do all around the country. And whether it's G-Corps or NORAC, it's all the same. I will say, okay, it's absolutely not different than Union Pacific. I'm going to be happy to go out there and have my staff out there this week, because if they're running on my railroad and they're not sounding their horns, we'll shut them down and we'll take those engineers out of service and get them off of our railroad, because they follow our rules. When they're on our railroad, they follow our rules. So they should be sounding the horn exactly the same as our trains, the exact same pattern. There's no different pattern in the United States. I've been doing this for 40 years. There's no different train pattern in the United States for the horns. Every single crossing is the same, unless it's a private crossing and you don't have to sound. I don't know. Yeah.
This question is about Burlingame, so we're not going to be able to answer it here, but we're happy to talk afterwards. Is there any work being done to establish a quiet zone in Burlingame? General comments. More trains equals more honking. My little girl wakes up all night long, and we have double pane windows and a noise machine running. This is a new problem that is ongoing. Please don't tell us it's solved. I challenge you to spend a night in Sunny Bray and tell us that you fixed it. Well, I think what we have been talking about here is that there's a process to have no horn noise in the future, and that would be a quiet zone. Until then, we are following the established federal and state and rules of the other railroads that we have across the country. Horn noise sound like a sick cow. I don't have to answer that one, right? Okay. Listen, when people say there's an issue, you wasted the time telling people horns were not louder. This turns goodwill and erodes trust. The peninsula is an equal constituency. We notice disrespect, not listening. and not inviting peninsula officials to the ribbon cutting. Please do not let Caltrain follow BART into the abyss. For the first one, we certainly acknowledge that there was an issue with the train horn noise when they first rolled out with the electric trains, and thank you for speaking up. We heard from this community and we heard from others, which told us something is different. And when we hear from a lot of community members, as we did about the horn noise, we did look into it and saw that the decibel levels were higher. As we said, I think that a lot of us expected that it would be even quicker fix, and it took us longer to do it, but they are now at the lower level. As far as just in general, about individuals not being at a ribbon cutting, I think I would have to know more information. I'm happy to talk to someone about that afterwards. And please do not let Caltrain follow BART into the abyss. I mean, we are certainly very proud of the electrification system that we have in place with faster trains. And it's not the speed, but it's because of the technology of the electric trains. They're able to start and stop faster so they can more quickly get to different stations. So we're proud that we have a better system that gets you places quicker. It's also more frequent, so you can use it at different times of the day. And then the experience on the trains is a lot nicer. If you haven't been on the trains lately, I encourage everyone to check it out. I mean, it really does feel like a brand new system with free Wi-Fi, with digital display signs. There's lots of areas where you can call if you need additional assistance. There's always 2 conductors on our trains. There's more storage underneath. We have lots of bike spaces. I mean, it really is. No, for this one, I've read all the ones on here.
We're still going through.
We have other questions left. Thank you. So we have this whole pile. This is the stack we've gone through. I was just trying to answer the question on this one. So again, we are proud of the new system that we have in place, but also on this one, it's a brand new system. And so we certainly want to hear from you on that too. If you're riding the train and say, hey, the Wi-Fi was a little kinky today, send us a note, because that way we can track it and fix it and continue to improve our system. And we truly believe that we need to continue to improve. We want to make sure that our system is one that works for the communities for your everyday needs, or if you're going to the office, if you're using it on the weekend. And so we benefit from hearing from you. And so I encourage you to continue to let us know. We do appreciate your comments, and we appreciate that people came out today to learn more and to give us additional feedback. Okay, next one. Why do horns blow continuously from 1st through 5th? I think Brent showed on the map that they are very close together, so it might feel like that. And San Mateo has more at-grade crossings than any other city on the peninsula. I think the quiet zone will be another one that would address how the horns sound in this community. Okay. I think we are moving on now to parking track comments. What written commitments have been made to complete the Caltrain wall as promised in Hayward Park between 10th and 14th? We certainly, you can talk about it, and maybe I can as well on this. I have been at Caltrain long enough that I do remember the last time that we came to the community to talk about the parking track and the wall. And I know that we can do better than what we did for this last round, especially with any changes that are now in place around the parking wall. I'm just going to say we could have done better on our communication on that. What you have from us today is another example of what we plan to do, and that you can hold us to this. We are planning to put and extend the wall in the areas that we said today, and that's a commitment that you have from us. Second one, enhancement wall shorter than planned and doesn't cross the intersections of 10th Avenue because of an environmentally sensitive area. Yet all the construction staged exactly from that area, with lots of construction being done north of 10th Avenue. If the area at 10th is so sensitive, why did so much construction take place there? How about we'll start with that question and then.
Yeah, so just looking at the question. Okay. So the reason why, when we talk about environmentally sensitive area, we're talking about what we can't put into or really deeply put into the soil. And so environmentally sensitive area for this specific region was there's archaeological resources that are deeper into the ground, and we cannot impact those. And so there's a level of the kinds of vehicles that we're taking in that we're not impacting or shifting the soil at the highest of levels. So you have to think, I'm going to try to do this with my hands a little bit, but you've got like the base level of soil and ground, right, that you're working with. And then underneath that, that's where the archaeological resources are sitting, and even much deeper than that. And so when you have a car going over it, that's not impacting it just as much. But when you are going to be putting a wall in there, that's going to, the sidings and the poles that are actually going to dig deeper into the ground are going to impact those archaeological resources. And we want to make sure that we're being as mindful to the environmental sensitivities when respecting that specific region. And so that is why you saw some of those construction vehicles going over that area.
Yeah, and actually, let me read the rest of it, which I think is still answered by your question, but I want to be mindful that there was more on here. So it said during the project planning, the proposed set out track was sited between 11th and 14th, which would avoid the archaeological resource. Construction access to the right-of-way by all vehicles and equipment would be limited to the southern end of the project area between 11th and 14th Avenues, which would also avoid the resource. Archaeological resource just north of 10th Avenue. It's my belief that Caltrain staged work from 10th because it was easiest for them and disregarded the archaeological resource. Archaeological location. So I think you answered that. Is there anything you want to add to that? I think it's a similar comment on that. Where is the parking track?
So the parking track is located between specifically it's 10th to 14th Avenue is the span, especially where the enhancement wall is. And then it's really 12th and Railroad is the kind of the most, I would say, like key place if you were to ever drop it into like a map and wanted to go check out where this wall is. And so I always, when I'm heading over there to visit on site, I type in 12th and Railroad, and that's where I typically find it.
What would change at 4th and 5th for a quiet zone?
So we have gates coming in there. We have a lot of concrete improvements, right away or signage. There is a lot of warnings and information and other areas that are making improvements over there. So it's, if you look at that site, it looks very, that's what I'm looking for. I don't want to say safe. It does look safe, right? But that location has the improvements that are more in line with a pet crossing that would have the gates like a quad gate. May 2025.
We are getting down to just a couple cards. So please, Lillian, hold up your hand. If you do have some more questions, we're happy to pass these out. The next one on here, horn noise. Can horns be modified to protect forward, not sideways? It's my understanding where the horns are located on our train are fixed. Some folks may remember with our diesel train horns, they used to be above the train and we lowered them below. And we definitely made sure for our electric trains that we put them as low as we could, which is what you saw in the picture there. Noise walls can bounce noise into more distant areas. I don't think this is a question, but I certainly think it's a comment. We're happy to talk to this individual about what they're specifically hearing in that area. And then this last one is not related to either of them, but I will just read it for the city. Concern about daily drawing of backup beepers from City Lot and Plumbing Supply Company. Do you have an answer for that? No.
I can follow up with it. Not right now, but.
Again, thank you all for your time tonight. We will stick around if people want to talk to us about anything specific they had. I want everyone to know we appreciate you spending your time to be here and to give us your comments and obviously be engaged in this issue, and we appreciate it. I don't know if you'd like to close it. Okay. Thank you all. Thank you all for coming.
Yeah, amazing reading abilities. After the,